Julie Seghers from the OECD to give us some insights also to reflect on the outcomes of this event, and also telling us a little bit about the Committee of Practice on Poverty and Inequalities at the OECD DAC that she is managing. So please, Julie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Blandine, and thank you, everyone. Let me just start by thanking Concord for the excellent report and the event today. I think this has been a really inspiring discussion. Creating these spaces for dialogue like you did today is a key step in taking the agenda forward, but importantly, building the evidence and the analysis to inform this discussion is crucial. And I think your report does precisely this, as Albin was really insisting on. And I think it's also really nice for me to see how in this report you've put some of the OECD data to good use. So I'm really, hopeful that the report will provide a valuable tool, in particular for national CSO platforms to engage with their governments on these issues going forward. So a few highlights and things I've noted from today's discussion. The first point, I guess, would be that clearly there's a strong consensus on the fact that development cooperation should more deliberately play a role in addressing inequalities. And here, really working together to chart a path for how ODA can best do this is going to be very key. And I think from what we see in your report and some of the points that were raised, this means on the one hand, ensuring that ODA allocations do no harm and accelerate progress towards more equality. And on the other hand, it also means that development cooperation systems should be better equipped to translate these commitments into action. So, and I think one point that was also made very clear is that the COVID crisis and the climate breakdown have really heightened the urgency for this work. A second point I noted is that inequality challenges are very complex, and I think we really need to embrace this complexity. I think this requires approaching inequality from a multidimensional angle, with multidisciplinary strategies that really cut across silos and enhance policy coherence. And also this requires mobilizing, cooperating, and leveraging the action of a diverse range of stakeholders. Having said that, I also think it's very important that we demystify the work to reduce inequalities. It's complex, but it's achievable. And we know that many of the policy solutions, that work, we've heard from different speakers today on these policy solutions. And I think the report is really helpful in that it points to some very concrete entry points. Third, I think we've heard some very inspiring examples from member states really illustrating not only their commitment, but also some of the concrete actions they've started to take the agenda forward. So for example, hearing from Holger and Philippe, but we also discussed some of the limitations and shortfalls. And I think it clearly stood out that we now need to focus on very concrete things. So improving the data on ODA targeting of inequalities, developing practical tools and guidance, like Holger was explaining, encouraging peer learning as well. And I think this is going to be very key to push the needle and ensure proper mainstreaming for comprehensive rather than piecemeal action, as Tanya was highlighting. And fourth, even though we may sit in different places, I think we can each play a role in making the case for development cooperation that truly puts inequality reduction at its heart. Of course, civil society has always been a driving force for change in social justice in all segments of society. And I think the field of development cooperation is no exception to that. And we really need you and this type of work to help exert pressure from the bottom to help pave this road towards equality. I think here we saw today the different ways in which civil society can do this. So through research to build evidence on the state of play and the gaps, and kind of looking at specific donors, but also comparing the performances as the Concord report does, but also unpacking what this means in particular countries or region like Kwesi does with Oxfam. Also doing this through direct advocacy to hold your government to account, of course. You can also be doing this by sharing your own experience in tackling inequality through civil society programs, as Joanna pointed to with the work of Light of the World on disability. I really think it's very impactful for member states to hear from the steps your own organizations have taken in the fight against inequality.
This report allows us not only to compare the different governments' approaches on tackling inequalities, but also to draw inspiration from the different good practices that have been identified and hopefully trigger changes in the right direction and perhaps also some new collaborations.